College Football Rundown. Week 1 is somewhat in the books, Jeremy. We want to welcome everybody to this edition of College Football Rundown. Glenn Shaw and Jeremy Smith. And Jeremy, let's get right to it. Thursday night was not anywhere short of a shocker on both Vanderbilt and South Carolina. But let's start in Columbia, where Texas A&M went into Williams-Brice Stadium and pulled a shocker.
Definitely so. South Carolina was on an 18-game winning streak, the longest streak in the country as far as home winning streak. And they absolutely just got dominated on both sides of the ball. I mean, Kenny Hill picked up right where Johnny Manziel left off and then some. Broke Johnny Manziel's school record for most passing yards in a game. Definitely played as good as anybody can play in a game. And they we have to see now, is South Carolina really that poor on defense, or did they just have a bad day? It definitely didn't look good in week 1.
Well, and that's another thing I was going to ask. 600 plus yards, this Texas A&M offense. They had over 300 heading in halftime. What does that say about South Carolina? They're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense, something we didn't mention before. Steve Spurrier not very happy with that. Do you see them maybe going back to a 4-3? How are they going to make those changes?
See, that's the tough part, because if you try to implement, or if you try to switch back now at this point to go to a 4-3, you have a game in a week, you play Georgia in 2 weeks. It's going to be really hard because you've been trying to work on that 3-4 all off season, so that's going to be tough. We'll probably stick with it just based on the fact that they've already implemented their style to it this year. But it appears that losing Clowney and Quarles definitely was a big blow to them, because they definitely look very poor on defense. No one's won game, but they started ranked number 9. They're going to fall big time.
0 sacks in the game for South Carolina in this past Thursday night. Something different than from last year. Vanderbilt heads into their season opener, anchored down on the back of the jerseys, and so NCAA comes out and says, no, Vanderbilt, you can't do that. Was that a jinx or not? They come out and look flat. Temple 37-7, and I don't think anybody expected that as well.
Not at all. I mean, Vandy, even though James Franklin did take some of the recruits up to Penn State with him, nobody expected Vandy just to get trounced. I know there was a weather delay because of storms, about an hour and a half, but still, there was no excuse. I mean, Temple came in and just absolutely dominated the entire game. Vanderbilt, decided on Patton Robinette as the starting quarterback, and then went through all 3 of their quarterbacks. Turned the ball over 7 times, scored 7 points. That's not good when you have turnovers as many as you have points.
Yeah, 3 different quarterbacks played the other night for Vanderbilt. Who's going to start next Saturday? That's up in the air. And just to keep everybody informed, Penn State, Central Florida playing in Dublin right now. We've kind of caught a little bit about that. Interesting game venue for these 2 teams.
Yeah, definitely so, and it's kind of a cool atmosphere. I mean, I know sometimes in college football they play in different environments, in the United States. Like, I know one year they played at Wrigley Field, I think one year they played at Yankee Stadium, but yeah, it's kind of it's different. I mean, this game kicked off early this morning, so if you wanted to see it, you had to get up early.
Well, let's go into some of the games today that are going to be key highlights. Let's start off with Georgia-Clemson. We're going to be kicking off about 4:30 Central Time on ESPN. And Jeremy, this is a game that I think a lot of SEC fans kind of look at today from an SEC standpoint, just as a revenge game for Georgia last year. Kind of didn't kick off the season right. It didn't really hinder them like we might have thought it would. But entering this game, some question marks. Both quarterbacks for Georgia and Clemson are out, Taj Boyd and Aaron Murray. Where do you look to fill that void? We already know that Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall are going to be playing, so that might help out Georgia a little bit.
Definitely, and they got a deep receiving corps, so that's going to help out Hudson Mason. Definitely, all the pressure is not going to be on him for sure with all the sporting cast that he has. And it's big because Georgia has a bye week next week. If they can somehow come out and get a big win and get revenge back against Clemson, they have a week off to prepare for South Carolina at Williams-Brice, so that would be huge for their confidence going forward.
In Sanford Stadium, that's going to be a very loud stadium at that. I'm sure that's very well sold out. And then West Virginia and Alabama is going to be playing about 2:30 Central Time, and that game might be a little bit more interesting than people might think. Alabama has struggled recently with spread attacks. You look at Auburn, you look at Oklahoma, who have kind of posed the will on Alabama's defense. What does Nick Saban do to try to slow down this West Virginia team? You have to believe they're going to run no huddle.
They're absolutely going to run no huddle, and I think one of the things that Nick Saban is going to rely on is his defensive pressure. I mean, the fact that, these athletic teams, and that's one of the things they got exposed in against, I mean, I know the Auburn game was a crazy game with a missed field goal return, but and against Oklahoma, I mean, they just absolutely got out hustled in that game. I think you're going to see a lot of zone blitzes. I think you're going to see a lot of Alabama is one of the best defenses in the country. We all know that. No, so I definitely think they're going to be prepared for this game. I think it's going to be close for a little while, but I think Alabama will impose their will with their deep stable of running backs. And Also, Blake Sims making his first start, but
Yeah.
expected to see Jacob Coker in the game as well, they say.
Yeah, and they probably will split reps, I imagine, just to kind of see how each played the first team offense. Both have been playing exceptionally well in practice, but they're looking to just kind of see where Blake Simpson is, I'm sure. And he's been there.
Exactly.
He's been sitting behind, so he's definitely earned the right.
Right.
Let's move on to LSU Wisconsin. This is a dark horse game, for me, entering the season. Les Miles, we talked about it last weekend, how this is kind of a dark horse team in the West. This is an important game for LSU to me. They're replacing a lot of starters, who their quarterback's going to be. Wisconsin's not a team to shake a stick at. This team can get flat after.
Definitely so. I think this is going to be a very good game. I know most of the time, you always think, well, the SEC, yes, they are the superior conference, over history, but I think this could be a very interesting game because Wisconsin's a very good team, and I think they have a really good chance at beating LSU. Not saying that they will, but I think they have a really good shot. Great stable of running backs there as well, and it's going to be one of those physical, hard-fought games, battle in the trenches type of games.
And this is one of those games, guys, if you want to go back and look at classic football to where it would have looked like in the 90s, this is the game this weekend that's going to very well resemble that.
Yep.
Well, Jeremy, let's talk about predictions. Let's first start out where we started, Georgia Clemson. I gave my pick last week. I'm still going to stick with Georgia. Where do you see this game going on the end of things?
I do definitely think it's going to be tight. I think Georgia's definitely going to rely on their running attack to open up the passing game, of course, to get Mason comfortable. I think Clemson's obviously going to be focused on that, which is what's going to help Hudson Mason to open up the passing game. I think Georgia does wind up winning this game. They're going to use the home crowd to their advantage. I think they wind up coming out and winning the game in the end by a score of about 31-20.
Now, one game we haven't talked about a little bit, and that's my fault, is the Auburn-Arkansas game. It's going to be kicking off at 3 o'clock on the SEC Network. And we talked about Auburn, what they're returning. Nick Marshall, the head of the offense again this year. Expect big things from this offense. Where do you see this game going? Obviously, Arkansas is replacing a couple of guys, but they didn't do well last year, and it doesn't like this year's going to go well for them again.
No, not at all. Arkansas had definitely. One strength of theirs is their running backs, but. Talent-wise, from top to bottom, Auburn is vastly superior, and I don't think this is going to be very close, even by halftime. I think Auburn runs away with this one, by a score of maybe 42-17, something to that range.
And then we go to Alabama, West Virginia. Again, we talked about the fast pace of West Virginia. Probably not going to be much of a difference maker as to where they could win, but can it be closer than the experts think?
Definitely think so. Like I said, West Virginia, I do feel can stick with them for about half the game or so, but definitely can see Alabama Crimson Tide imposing their will, as I said, and coming out and finishing the game off strong, winning by a score of about 31-14.
And finally, LSU Wisconsin.
Definitely feel like, honestly, Wisconsin, I feel like is going to pull the upset in this one. I know they're ranked 13 and 14, but just the traditional Big Ten over SEC you don't see. I do think Wisconsin's going to come out and find a way to upset them 27-24.
Well, folks, that's it for this morning's edition of College Football Rundown. Please stay tuned. We will be here this evening. Enjoy football today, everybody.